We're going to learn how to make an increase, which will be the same no matter what kind of stitch you're using. Basically, when you're making an increase, you're putting 2 stitches in the space where one usually goes. Normally, in this next stitch, I just go in and make 1 single crochet. But instead of moving on to the next stitch, I'm going to take my hook and go back through the same hole and pull up my loop like I'm making a single crochet. And then finish off the single crochet. So now I have 2 stitches in 1 stitch space, so I've increased by 1 stitch. Let's do it again in this next stitch space here. I'm going to go in and make my single crochet, so I have 1 stitch in this hole. Now I'm going to take my hook and go through the same hole again and make that next stitch in the same place as my first single crochet. I've made 2 stitches in this stitch space below, so I've increased by another stitch. It works the same if you're stitching half double crochet too. I'll go ahead and work a half double crochet in the next stitch space. So there's 1 stitch in that space now. I'm taking my hook and going through the exact same stitch to make another half double crochet. So there's 1 stitch in that space now. Let's do another half double crochet stitch increase into the next stitch. Make a half double crochet and then work your next half double crochet in this exact same space. Yarn over first and pull through. And again, we have 2 stitches in this 1 space. If you want to increase with double crochet stitches, make a double crochet in your next stitch. And then we'll put our next double crochet into the same space where we just made our first double crochet. So yarn over and go right back through that same space, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. So now I have 2 stitches and they're both coming out of the same exact stitch space to create an increase. Let's do it again. Yarn over and go into your next stitch space. Yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2. So you've got 1 stitch in the stitch space and now we need to put 1 more in there. So yarn over. We'll go through the same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. So again, if we look at it, we have 2 double crochets and they're both coming out of this 1 stitch space. We finished this line of increases, and because my stitches are all different heights, it gets a little taller towards the middle. But you can also see that the row is getting wider because I've increased on every stitch. Decreasing is the opposite concept of increasing. We're going to take 2 stitches and combine them into 1. If we're working single crochet, go through the first stitch and pull up a loop. But instead of yarning over and finishing off this stitch, I'm also going to go through and grab my next stitch. So go into the stitch next to it and pull up a loop. And now I have 3 loops on my hook. The one that was already on my hook, the one from the first stitch, and the one from the second stitch. Now yarn over and go through all 3 of them. So now I have 1 stitch made from these 2 stitches. Let's try that again. Go into the next stitch. We're still using single crochet, so we just go into it and pull up a loop. So now I have my original stitch and the loop from my first stitch, and then I go into my second stitch and pull up a loop. So I've got 3 loops on my hook, I yarn over, and I go through all 3 of these. So again, I've combined this stitch and this stitch into just 1 loop here at the top. So 2 stitches have gone down to 1. Let's try it again. We go into our next stitch, pull up a loop, and then go into our second stitch and pull up a loop. So we have 3 loops, our original, our first stitch, and our second stitch. Yarn over and go through all 3 of these. Now to decrease with half double crochet, you're going to yarn over first, then go into your first stitch and pull up a loop. But instead of yarning over and going through all 3 of these right now, we need to go into our second stitch. And because it's half double, we need to yarn over first, then we go through the second stitch, pull up another loop, and now we have 5 loops. You're going to yarn over and you need to pull your hook through all 5 loops. So really pull down on that space to get through them all. Wiggle your way through and go through all 5 stitches. So we're back down to 1. We've taken 1, 2 stitches and combined them into 1. So again, with the half double, yarn over first, and then go into the first stitch and pull through a loop. Leave all 3 of these stitches on your hook. Then we need to grab the second stitch. So we need to yarn over, go into the second stitch, pull up a loop, and now we have 5 stitches on the hook. Yarn over and pull your loop through all 5 loops on the hook. And that takes 1, 2 stitches and combines them into just 1 stitch. To decrease with the double crochet, the concept is the same. We'll start the first double crochet with a yarn over, then go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, then yarn over and go through 2 loops. But instead of doing our next yarn over and going through the last 2 loops, we're going to start the next stitch that we want to decrease. So you need to yarn over, go through the second stitch, pull up a loop, then we yarn over and go through 2, and now we're going to yarn over and we have our original stitch. This is the first stitch, this is our second stitch. We yarn over and go through all of them. So we've taken 1, 2 stitches and turned them into 1. So with double crochet again, you're going to yarn over first. Go into your first stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2, then you need to stop here. Yarn over and go into your second stitch. So we're picking up the loop in our second stitch, yarn over and go through 2, and now we have our original, our first and our second, and we're ready to finish this stitch off. Yarn over and go through all the loops. So we have 1, 2 stitches and it's been decreased down to 1. So again, with double crochet, yarn over, bring up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, stop right there, yarn over, go into your second stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2, and then we're ready to finish these stitches with a yarn over and we'll go through all 3.